Joining me right now is former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, former Democratic presidential candidate, and former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, along with former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Honduras, Mexico, and the Philippines, former Deputy Secretary of State and former National Intelligence Director under Bush 43, John Negroponte. Good to see you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Governor, let me kick it off with you. You've actually been in talks with the North Koreans before. Your takeaway from this summit?
Well, on the positive side, a potential normalization of relations, the two leaders getting to know each other, perhaps trusting each other, difference in tone. A year ago, we were in terrible shape in the peninsula, enormous tension, a lessening of tension, all of that good. On the mixed side, I wanted to see more meat on the bones. I wanted to see more specifics on verification, on inspections. We have a vague statement that commits to denuclearization, with both sides having different interpretations. I would have wanted to see more on what we're going to do about freezing missiles and nuclear weapons, the negotiating process, which is starting, which is good.
Yeah.
Lastly, I wanted to hear more on human rights. I wish we had been stronger. The president did mention something that's very important to me: get the remains of our 5,100 soldiers back from the Korean War. I wanted to see a little meat on the bones there, too. On the whole, a good start,
yeah,
but a lot remaining. So positive on the tone, on the normalization, on the substance, the nuclear, mixed.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points. John Negroponte, your thoughts. And let me just point out that this is 1 year after Otto Warmbier was released, as Dagan just told us. It's also a bit of an anniversary, the day so many decades later that Ronald Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Well, I don't think it could have gone much better, particularly in the amount of time that was devoted to it. I think the president basically, to use a military term, indicated the commander's intent, thereby setting the tone and the table for what's going to follow. They did talk about improving relations. They talked about denuclearization. They talked about ending the war. And they talked, as Bill Richardson referred to, about the legacy issue of what to do with the to pursue the issue of the 2,000 or 3,000 people who are still missing from U.S. soldiers,
yeah,
from the Korean War. So I think it was very good. The other point I'd make is that there is follow-up, and I think those are the issues that Ambassador Richardson mentioned are going to have to be dealt with quickly and thoroughly by Secretary of State Pompeo. I was glad to see that he was mentioned specifically by name in the declaration. And what this tells me is that our president and our Secretary of State are prepared to devote a lot of their own personal attention and capital to moving this issue forward. And maybe that's one of the significant differences between what's happened before. I mean, we've seen real presidential involvement in this.
Yeah. Well, I want to get to some of the issues like the war games that are going to be stopping, as well as the president saying he wants to get troops out of there. But first, let's get the president's comments in here, because Fox News' Sean Hannity interviewed President Trump yesterday, got his take on whether the tough talk between the two actually brought them to the table. Listen to the president last night with Sean.
A lot of people, critics, quickly saying, when you said Little Rocket Man or Fire and Fury, or, you know, when he said, oh, I've got a red button on my desk, he said, well, mine's bigger and it works better than yours. How did it evolve from that to this? Because he did say at the very beginning, we're going to basically start over, but that has been building behind the scenes.
Well, I think without the rhetoric, we wouldn't have been here. I really believe that. You know, we did sanctions and all of the things that you would do, but I think without the rhetoric, you know, other administrations, I don't want to get specific on that, but they had a policy of silence. If they said something very bad, very threatening and horrible, just don't answer. That's not the answer. That's not what you have to do. So I think the rhetoric, I hated to do it. Sometimes I felt foolish doing it, but we had no choice.
So, Ambassador Negroponte, your reaction to that, and what about the idea that the president has committed to stopping the military exercises between the U.S. and South Korea? Gordon Chang made the point earlier that readiness is so critical. If we stop these war games, as the president called them, that could put readiness in jeopardy.
Right. Well, first of all, stop. I think he doesn't mean to definitively end them. The word, I think, was more like suspend at one point they talked about, and I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to suspend them. Let's remember, we'll have time now. We'll have an opportunity to figure out how serious North Korea is and how this process goes. This doesn't rule out the possibility of renewing such exercises if the situation should ever call for that. The other thing I'd say is I don't think South Korea will be put at any particular jeopardy or risk with some kind of short or medium-term suspension of exercises. They have an extremely strong and capable military. And in the current atmosphere, talking of peace and the body language that we're seeing coming from both sides, I think that these exercises will be suspended at a period of much lower risk.
Yeah. Governor, your thoughts. This is obviously a historic meeting. It was not done under any other previous administrations, including under President Obama. Do you think President Obama should have held this kind of meeting? Earlier, Dennis Rodman told Chris Cuomo on CNN that he begged Obama to go to North Korea, that he had a message for him, but he said he blew him off, according to Dennis Rodman.
Well, you know, I think going into the past, blaming others is not good foreign policy.
Right.
It's not unifying. I give the president credit for three things. One, agreeing to the summit in the first place from the top to the bottom. Secondly, the sanctions that were worked out, especially with China, have helped bring North Korea to the table. And I think third, this historic summit is positive. But, you know, the North Koreans, I've negotiated with them. They never say yes. They never say no. They're waiting. They're stalling. You've got to pin them down. I would have wanted to see more verification, more meat on the bones.
All right.
But I agree with Ambassador Negroponte. I mean, the military exercise thing is a small concession.
Thank you so much.
And we also... Okay.
Bill Richardson, Ambassador John Negroponte, thank you, gentlemen. Back in a minute.